What is trauma-informed parenting or trauma-informed practice, trauma-informed education? What does it mean to come from a perspective where you are taking the idea of trauma into account when you're dealing with kids or other adults? I'm Dr. Lilach Saperstein, host of the All About Audiology podcast, and I work with families to help them navigate the life after a diagnosis. What does it mean now that we have this diagnosis? How are we going to parent this child? And how are we going to care for ourselves and our whole family unit with this information? So I want to talk today about trauma-informed approach and point you to the link down in the description for a full episode, a conversation with Colleen Wilkinson, who goes by at Trauma-Informed Montessori on Instagram. And the idea is that trauma is something that happens in our body. Trauma is a response of our nervous system just saying there's too much and I cannot take it in. It's being overwhelmed in a sensory way, right? Anxiety is like a little bit of that. We can feel ourselves coming up, like really alert, really heightened, very much in our heads. That's like a little bit of what that feels like. But trauma is when it goes over the threshold of what you can handle, what you can hold. And so our bodies, our nervous system can do one of three things: fight and get really ready to like get all your energy and aggression out and be super irritable and be like having a hard conversation that's like all confrontational. Or it could be flight, which is get out of Dodge, running away, not being in a situation, like avoiding, not answering phone calls, not answering emails, having to miss days of work, things like that, where you're just not available, out. And there's also freeze. And that is like another option of this, what our nervous system can do in response to overwhelming situation or overwhelming input, is to go into freeze and just not know how to react, what to do, what to say, just frozen. And you can sometimes hear like words stuck in your throat or that you just can't move your feet. You may have had some of these experiences during traumatic experiences in your life. Sometimes we think of trauma as this big, huge thing that is, has to be a catastrophe. And those things definitely are traumatic. But trauma in the body and in the sense of what the reaction is for the person can happen any day, unfortunately. But it's kind of our body's fail-safe, a way to keep us safe when things are too much, to either get out of the situation, be combative and defend yourself, or to freeze and kind of do like a play dead, where you just like kind of don't want to be seen. You want to get swallowed up, that feeling. And so the little things that can happen to one person, little things, can be to someone else something that makes their body go into that overdrive traumatic situation, that kind of state. And I see this happening once I learned about this whole paradigm, once I took on this perspective that things are traumatic, that certain situations, even someone's comments to you, can get you into that situation, and then you're not available. Like emotionally and mentally, you cannot use your executive functioning, right? You cannot use the part of your brain, the part of your brain that makes decisions, the part of your brain that's rational, that can think about the future, that can think of consequences. That part of your brain does not have bandwidth when you're in a traumatic state, when you're in that kind of heightened freeze, flight, or fight. And so the more I realized that this was a way to observe human behavior and take this whole experience into account, it changed a lot for me, both in my parenting and in my practice as an audiologist with my patients, and also in my interactions in my personal daily life with friends and neighbors and colleagues and coworkers and my family. So I just want to give you one example, which happened recently with my 6-year-old. She just turned 6, and we are learning to read. So we're doing a lot of reading exercises and books, and sometimes it can be really overwhelming and frustrating. And I can see that her anxiety comes up and that she looks away from the page and starts to fidget her body in a very agitated way, and that she, starts talking about things that are not related. And okay, so we're gonna say fine, she doesn't want to read. Like, it's just a behavior. Don't give legitimacy to that and just get her back on task. And sometimes that's the case, right? I have to be able to read her, and I know her, and I know her reactions to things. And so I can see that there's a difference between just regular dilly-dallying and not wanting to do the task versus sometimes when I could see that it's getting over her head, that she's like really in so many thoughts. I can't do this. I won't ever be able to do this. And trying to see when she starts to cry, like, and just looking at that situation, not as a power struggle that she's like doesn't want to do what I'm telling her, and I'm going to put my dominance as the authority of the parent over her to do it, but actually to take like 1 second back, one little deep breath, and try and see, is this something where her availability to learn is being blocked? What are the barriers for her to be able to do this? So instead of like, no, just read it, point it, do it again, read it, what does it say? Like those kinds of reactions, which, sometimes you haven't. But when I notice, when I'm aware of it, I'll look over to her and I'll say, this isn't easy. It takes time to learn new things. And we'll kind of like just bring down the state, the emotional heightened situation, and explain that we don't have to do everything right now, kind of give the pressure a release. And I can see it in her body, in the tenseness of her fingers, how she's sitting, how she's interacting with me, that it gets her out of that state. And so when I get the connection, which is the thing that is the antidote to trauma, is relationships, is meaningful contact, not necessarily touch, but contact, emotional words, even an eye, right? A gaze, right? Looking at someone from across the room, but they know that you are watching them, that you've got them. So getting back to the connection is what helps to come out of that loop and not go into a trauma response. So I just wanted to share that here with you, and recommend that you listen to the interview with Colleen Wilkinson for more information about this, more tips. And this is something that's really, really changed my perspective on life. A lot of times seeing how people react, people will say things on Facebook, in real life, on Twitter, in response to all sorts of situations that you can see that they are coming not from a really thought out, rational place, but that they are physically in a turmoil, okay? And when educators, parents, and healthcare professionals can treat the people that they interact with, especially children, with a trauma-informed understanding of connection over compliance, then the world can change. Things can change for you, for your family, for your children. And I would be so excited to hear what you think about this, what your experience with this paradigm is, and learn more about how this affects your life. So come and find me over at allaboutaudiology.com and the All About Audiology podcast, Facebook group, Instagram. I'm Dr. Lilach Saperstein. Thank you for joining me today. Be well.